Awesome. Just a quick rundown. Do I have a voice? I do have a voice. I don't want to be like last time when I started my stream. For the first minute, I was just silent, because I didn't turn on my mic. Awesome. Welcome to a stream where I will spend the next hour or so taking a look at Amazon's API gateway. So this is, again, like the other streams, a very exploratory look at a lot of the AWS services. Today we're looking at the AWS API Gateway, which is a massive service. And please do not expect that I will cover all the things when it comes to API Gateway. I'll tell you a bit later on who can you check out for all of those things API Gateway related. Post some great resources. So today, how are we going to do things? We're going to talk about the API Gateway, right? We're going to take a look at what the API Gateway is. What is a REST API? We'll talk about some differences between our REST API Gateway and the new HTTP API endpoint for the API Gateway. Rolls off the tongue. We will maybe build some APIs, like just choose some basics ones and go through a bunch of settings, maybe take a look at API keys and all those little things. So there's a lot of things here and there within API Gateway which are super interesting. So I will be pointing them out. But yeah, let's kind of have a look. So first of all, I will switch to my screen so we can have a look at something. So most of today's streams will be spent not in the terminal, unfortunately. We will be looking at the web UI, but I will be using terminal to illustrate some things, right? So what is an API gateway? Or what is an Amazon API gateway? So an Amazon API gateway is a service for creating, publishing, managing, monitoring, and securing REST, HTTP, and WebSocket APIs, right? So there's three types of APIs we support within API Gateway. That's REST, HTTP, and WebSocket. So, but I hear you asking, or you're somebody asking, so what is a REST API? And actually, not so long ago, I also asked the same question. So what is this REST API? People mention REST APIs left and right, and nobody was able to tell me, so what is REST? What does REST stand for? Is REST an acronym? Well, actually, yeah. So REST is an acronym for, where's my note here? Representational State Transfer. So think of it as an endpoint where you ask a question and you get an answer, or you put some data to it and it ingests the data and does something with it. Now, the API in itself, most of the time, does not do the magic. There's a lot of backend that does all of the magic. So let's kind of have a look at here. So let's say there's this website, right? It's the bookstore.com, right? So it's an amazingly huge bookstore. And you want to go have a look at some books. The way you have a look at books, you can just enter that URL and just search for yourself, right? Or you do that and it will basically, this API endpoint, if this was an endpoint, will return you all the books. So you basically ask this API endpoint, or this REST API endpoint, hey, get me the books. Which is great, but sometimes we want a bit more functionality with it. Let's say you want to search for a book. You say a book, and I want the name, and I want to give it. What is the American book everybody reads in the United States in school? It's the Catcher in the Rye, right? Is it like that? I don't know. I come from a different part of the world, right? So you give the name of a book right now, and when you do this, it would basically take this information, post it to the API. API would do something with that information. It would most likely pass it on to some backend service, like a server or a Lambda script maybe, and it will wait for the response and give you that response back. Let's say you want to create the book, right? So it's not just about asking questions, it's also about telling the API I want something. So create book, or like sell book, like if you do it like that, and then you give it a name, Darko's great book, price would be some 100 money, right? And what else? I mean, I can just add a different lot of things, right? You basically pass some information off to the API endpoint, and the API endpoint does something. But again, it returns you always something, or it should always return something. Even if you're not asking it a question, if you're telling it something, it should always give you some information back saying, yeah, you know what, I've created that, or I have not created that. So back to Amazon API Gateway. So actually, let me open a console so we can have a look at that. Like this. Yeah. So the Amazon API Gateway is, we currently, again, as I said before, support 3 types of APIs, right? HTTP, REST APIs, and WebSockets. So, and all of our RESTful APIs are basically HTTP based. Doesn't matter if this one is called HTTP, the other ones are also HTTP based, and they enable you like stateless client server communication, or if you're using WebSockets, it's stateful. Yeah, and they implement all the standard HTTP methods such as get, post, put, patch, and delete, right? So all of those things exist there as well. So when would you use which one? So this is a great question when people ask. So like you have all of these WebSockets, right? Which one is right for me? Especially since, you know, there's a new release of HTTP APIs. So let me just get the odd one out of here, the WebSocket API, because the WebSocket API is this stateful API, or it keeps the connection open between, you know, client and the server. You can think of the WebSocket API as like if you would have a chat application, you would like to keep that WebSocket open, for example. So in that use case, but for 99% of the use cases, people use stateless API endpoints. And the 2 stateless API endpoints that exist here are HTTP APIs and the big enchilada, the REST APIs. So what's the difference? So as it says right here, right, it's like low latency, cost-effective REST API, right? So it's still a REST API, but it has a lot of features stripped out. So and it has some features built in. So one of the things that people would have like issues with the traditional REST API, that it was a bit expensive, right? It was expensive, it was complex, it was relatively slow. Now, when I say relatively, I really don't think it was sluggish. It could be faster, right? And so HTTPI kind of fixed that and introduced this much cheaper, much faster, but alas, with a much more limited set of features, API endpoint. So if you wanted something like API key integration or native integration with Amazon Cognito, that doesn't exist, right, with HTTP APIs. If you wanted to do something like usage plans with set API keys, HTTP API does not support that. But if you want to use like native connect, native OpenID, and OAuth 2, that supports. Or if you want to use Cognito through JWT, or that's JSON something, the HTTP API supports that as well. Also, you know, coarse or cross-origin request something is natively supported within HTTP APIs. Automatic deployments, and we'll see that later on once we get into actually building things. Automatic deployments of new APIs are supported within HTTPI and are not supported in REST API. And yeah, so also when it comes to security, client certificates, WAF, and resource policies are not available on HTTP APIs. So which one should you use? Again, depends. For a lot of people, having just an HTTP API is sufficient, right? You have this Lambda backend or even an HTTP backend, something sitting in the back that you use as your backend, right? HTTP APIs should do the well, unless you have some complex requirements for authentication and controls and all the things I mentioned before, HTTP APIs should be good enough. So make sure to check them out. Again, they're limited in features, and I expect those features to grow up to a certain extent. You know, we don't want to overload the service with so many features that it becomes, you know, the big, slow, lumbering API that it's trying to kind of stand in for. And the REST API, it's the thing that most people use. It has all of those things. It has, usage plans with API keys. It can use authorizers. IAM as an authorizer, right? Identification and identity and access management as an authorizer. It can use Lambdas as authorizers. It can use Cognito natively without JWT. So there's a lot more features available within the REST API. But when we talk about prices, it can be a bit more. It can be a bit more pricey, right? So, yeah. Yeah, so for to be fair, like for most applications that you just have a Lambda function in the backend where you kind of invoke it and get something back, an HTTP API should be perfectly sufficient for you, right? All right, let's set up an API, right? So let's try to do this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna, I have something here. Where is it? I think I have it somewhere here. Yeah, let me just move this here because I need to copy paste something from one of these things. Yeah. So what are we going to do? We're going to create a REST API. So we're going to use this big old API here to create an API endpoint that will just spit out something back, right? Super simple, nothing special. I'm actually using some example code. So we're going to be using it along with Lambda through a Lambda proxy setup, right? So let's do this, right? Click the build button. I'm going to use a REST API in this case. I'm just going to create a new API and I'm going to call it stream or hello stream. Right? All right. This is my API for the stream. And I will set the endpoint to be regional. Let me just move my face so I can click the buttons. I will set the API to be regional. Otherwise, if we're not using regional endpoints, this means that it will use basically, these are used for edge optimized API endpoints. So we don't care about that right now. So we're going to just stick to regional. All right, create API. Cool. Also just to mention, we could have imported a lot of different things. So if we have like a Swagger or Open API, schema and all those things, we could have imported that API and it would create this entire structure here as well. So it's not just all from scratch. So the main thing when it comes to this is we need first let's make the backend. Let's create this backend. Let's create this Lambda function that will do something for us, right? So Lambda functions are not per se part of API gateways, but most people use Lambda functions with API gateways. You can also trigger a lot of different things. You can even invoke AWS API calls in the backend. Like you can technically describe EC2 instances or do something else with the API call to do something. So let's give it a name, stream hello, right? That's fine. I will just use Node.js in this case because that's my example. I will create a new role template. I'll call it hello or stream hello execute role, and I will create the create function. That looks all good. Yeah. Takes a moment or two because it's creating that role, so it does take a moment or so. So we have a function here that's basically empty. It just has a hello world Lambda function, but I'm going to do something else because I want to add some functionality to it. So do this, paste this. Is that the one? Yeah, so that's fine. Save. So the goal of this Lambda script is this Lambda script will take a couple of things. It will take the current time, or basically the time of day, morning, afternoon, evening. It will take a name. It will take a city, and it will take a day as well, right? So like if you give it a day of the week. So nothing special. There's nothing to focus on this Lambda script. So we have created it. We have saved it. We can completely forget about it right now. So what we're going to have to do right now is we're going to create our first resource, right? So the resources are these. So when you have a look at this is a resource, right? cell book is a resource. Now it can have multiple methods when it comes to get, post, all those things. In this case, we're gonna create a resource for hello. So I'm gonna create a resource called hello. Super creative. I will configure all of this as a proxy resource, I believe. No, I'm not gonna do proxy. Let me click create resource. Oh, look, did I do it with the proxy thing? No, this is all good. Click create resource. I created my resource. Now this resource in itself has nothing. Literally, it's not able to do anything at this point. We need to define some methods. And when I said methods, these are the things that I mentioned before. All of these HTTP methods are supported. Actually, let me just select one and zoom in because I have noticed that this might be a bit too small for the stream. So I'm creating a method with get, and this get method basically will accept an HTTP get method with a header and return something back. So the way the REST API call looks. So this is the method with some header that it receives, right? Which includes like the get one, right? So this is by default get because just using curl simply like this or invoking this in the browser is a get method. And this is the header. These are the parameters it passes on, and these parameters or the request parameters are being processed later on in the thing. So I'll create a get method here. I'm gonna use the Lambda function. So that's the Lambda function I've created here. And see, I told you we don't need to care about the Lambda, but I forgot how I named the Lambda function. So it's called stream hello. So Lambda functions, that's fine. I will use Lambda proxy integration, right? So basically I'm passing this entire event, the entire thing, I get the entire string, the parameters, I'm passing it as an event to a Lambda function. Thus the Lambda function can actually parse that event internally. So I'll have a look here. So this event, yes, so see, it's querying the string parameters. Basically these parameters are being passed to the Lambda function, like in the form of a name, city, day, etc., etc. So these are the things this is how through the Lambda proxy integration, it's able to receive these things as well. So I'll select this. I'll make sure I'm using this region, and the name of the Lambda is stream hello. That's it. And moving my face. You're about to give the permission for this Lambda function. Just I want to confirm, and that's fine. Very cool. So now, if I would be opening my my thing here, I think I have this as well. Let me just move this somewhere else. I can do a big old curl here, right? So I can do a big old curl command here that's gonna just invoke a hello. So I could do curl v and then just I need an API endpoint IP address, right? So I need I need a URL. So let's have a look. Where can we find a URL? If we go to stages. Oh, I don't have a stage. See, this is something we've missed. So we need to create stages. Right now we have created a resources with empty stages. There's no stage. Think of stages as environments, production, development, testing, whatnot. So there's no different API endpoint stages that we can check out here to basically invoke our function. So let's create a stage. I'll create a prod, right? Because we want to do prod. This is prod. Please, yeah, and I'll just select the deployment. That's fine. Oh, see, we cannot create it because we don't have a deployment yet. What is a deployment, you may ask? So anytime you make a change to your API resources or methods or anything you do here, you need to deploy this, right? You need to deploy this API. So I will create a new stage, call it prod. This, I am prod, right? Prod, please dev here. And I will say first step. And that's it. So I've deployed my application to prod, or my API to prod, and this is the URL we're going to be using. So if I copy this URL and I do curl something something, like this, and then do prod, and then hello. Now I've given it hello. Now what should I give it to? I need to give it a name, right? So hello, my name is Darko. And then I need to pass it on a city, right? I'm based in Berlin. Berlin, that's how you write it. Then you need to pass it. Well, that's efficient, right? And then I'm gonna pass some headers as well. So if I do this, I pass a header with the content type. Content type application JSON. Do this, and then H day. What is today? Today is Thursday. Wow, almost Friday. Almost Friday. At least it's almost Friday for me. It's almost 6 p.m. Well, no, it's 6:20 p.m. Almost Friday. And the time is time evening for me, at least. Evening. All right, so hopefully once I hit enter on this one, this should be fine. This should pass. Oh no, I need this. So this should pass all the information back to the API endpoint, and it will return something to me. Missing authentication token. So when this happens, it means that I have made a mistake in my URL, most likely. So let me move my face again. Hello, names. Did I do it correctly? Did I call it hello? Resources. Hello. Yeah, I did it. Okay. So, and I don't have any authorization token. I believe I have screwed up something here when it comes to forming this curl thing. So here's the thing. I need to pass it a GET request. Is that correct? Let me just have a look here. No, I need to change something here. I need to change this from, no, not the method documentation. I need to change, can I edit the method directly? No, I'll delete the method. Oh well, bye-bye. Let me create a new method. So I shouldn't use get. I need to use any in this case because I'm going to be posting some things to this. So I'm going to just use any, save, Lambda function, again, Lambda proxy integration, or then stream hello, save, okay. Attaboy, that's fine. Now I want to deploy this, as mentioned before, deploy API, deploy to prod, because why not? Why not? Awesome, I think this looks good. So if I would be doing it like this. Yes. So as you can see here, I didn't specify which thing I'm gonna, which type of request I'm making. So it made a post request. So and the method here is good evening Darko of world. What did it do world? It should do Berlin. Okay. Hello Darko of world, I guess. Happy almost Friday. So why did it take world? Did I do something here? Darko City Berlin. See. So there's a default value in the city, or it took a default value because I didn't define a city. So I defined city, but I defined it badly. So if I escape this and go somewhere here, and then like that, come on, going up, and then to the end of the line, and you can see the city is uppercase. So now, good evening, Darko Berlin. Happy almost Friday, and you can see this entire resource input, basically what it got as my request. Now, one thing for you all here, when you do things with API gateways or with APIs in general, one piece of tool I would highly advise to you is called Postman, or Postman, or however you would call this. So Postman is a tool that basically helps you work with APIs. So one of the things I can do here is I can just take this and paste, not that, I can paste my URL, which I have here. If I copy this, do that, and then I can do hello, and then instead of doing that massive string there, I can just do name, Darko, right? Darko, city, Berlin. Then I can do day, almost Friday, and time is evening. So technically, it forms a little string like this. If I would send this, it will give me good day, Darko, Berlin. Okay, so it didn't parse some of these things properly. So daytime, did I do it how did I do it last time? So let me have a look. Is it time? Yeah, it's time and day. I did it all good. Let's have a look at our Lambda script. How does it accept the? So it takes the day, and it takes the time from the headers, right? So it doesn't take it from the input parameters. So I believe you can do that. So if I remove this and I add a header, for example, I add day and almost Friday, and then send it here. Good day, Darko, Berlin. Happy almost Friday. Very good. Going back to this, where does it get the time of day? Where does it get time? How does it handle time? Body JSON parse. Okay, so it takes it from the event body. So if I do this and then I add, can I do this and I time and evening? Would this work? Internal server error. It doesn't work that way. Maybe this. Time, evening. Like so. It doesn't work. So there is another way to pass it on a body in type of JSON, but I'm not an expert in Postman, so there must be some other way. In any case, if we completely ignore that and just add a header and just keep the standard parameters here, such as evening, or I can just remove that, it will work without me specifying the time. So that's a simple API. It works. It's great, right? Now let's go back to the console again. So now there's a couple of other things we can do here as well. So we can first of all, we can create multiple stages. So you wouldn't necessarily want to deploy your API changes directly to prod, right? Of course. So you can create a development stage, right? So you can create dev, put prod here, right? So, and I'll just take the last deployment that I've did here, and it will create a dev. It basically creates a /dev thing here. Now, here's one thing we can also talk about. There's one more way. Let me create a new resource. I'll call it don't mock me. And you'll see why, because we're going to be working with mock resources, right? So mock resources are basically the way give it integration with directly the API endpoint. So you're not invoking any backend things. You can kind of do things within the API gateway to an extent, right? It's very limited, but it can be of some use, right? So let me just focus my screen. Yeah, okay, cool. So let me add a method here, and I will create a method here that's gonna be get. But I'm just gonna select mock here and mock and nothing else. So that's about it. So if I go here, you can see that there's mock, and basically if I would test this, click here, I would get just nothing. It's just no data. It works. It's successfully executed. There's no problem here, but there is no no problems here. Also, this I haven't showed before. This is the test button. If you start developing Lambda functions and tests and APIs, this will be kind of the way you get kind of your initial tests. You get a lot of information back. So you will be using this a lot because you can define, parameters, headers, request bodies, etc., etc. You can do it all here and able to pass it on. So going back, so a couple of things here you can see. There's the method request. Now the method request is basically this is how you define the client's GET request, right? This is kind of a couple of things you can do here, authorization, request validation. This is where you define your API keys. And this is something we're going to be doing here as well. So one of the things we're going to be doing here is we're going to change the URL query string parameters. So we're going to add the query string parameter. So basically we're giving it a query string. A query string is like the name I've used. So I'm going to just use the query string parameter hello. Click hello, and that's good. I can define required, but I don't really have to. That's all good. So one of the things I can just go back to method execution. Now I go to integration request. So here I can map this. I can select this, click on application JSON. And now I need to do something here. So I'm gonna just use this generic template here, which I'm going to completely destroy. And I'm going to just do that. And I need to paste this from somewhere. Let me see. Because I really don't want to do this API. I don't want to type, there's a bunch of lines of JSON and I don't want to have to type all that. So here it is. If I go here, I paste that. So if param, or I'm not going to do this, if name equal, or no, it's hello, right? Hello equal stream, right? I'm going to get 200 back. If the name is not equal stream, it's going to return me 500. So this is kind of a simple way to do some basic things on API Gateway. So I'm going to click the save. I'm going to go back to method execution. Now I need to do the integration response, right? So here, one of the things I'm going to expand this thing and going to go to the, where is this? Go to the mapping templates, yeah, and going to change this JSON thing. I'm gonna give it a different kind of response. So I'm going to copy paste a whole bunch of things. Where's my response? And I'm not gonna like that. Hello from API Gateway. So if I get a 200 response, I'm going to say hello stream. This is your API Gateway. Okay, well, and click save. Now let's do something else. So I've clicked on save. I'm not sure if I have to click this save as well, but I'm gonna go method execution back again, and I'm gonna add the 500 code as well. So if I go to method response now and add a response, I'll add a code 500. Click save. That's fine. Gonna go back to method execution and integration response, and I'm gonna add something. I'm gonna use a regex here, so I'm gonna use this regex code because I want this to apply to any 5xx call, right? So gonna select method this one, right? I'm gonna make sure I choose this one. Pass-through should be the same, and clickety save. So going here, I'm gonna add another mapping template here. So application JSON should be right. Click save. Open that. I'm gonna just select this template, and I'm gonna copy paste. I think the same thing, but this is gonna be a different kind of code. This did not work. And click save. So now, in essence, one of the things I can do if I go back to my method execution and I click test and add it, hello equals Darko, click the test button, I will get the 500 code that did not work, right? But if I change this to stream, click test, said, hello stream, this is your API gateway talking. So this was kind of like a quick mock setup or a mock endpoint, mock backend, whatever you would like to call it, of an API gateway that you can set up like that. So you can do some quick actions, depending on what you pass it on. You can pass some information back, or it has its use cases. So now I can do this. I can do this like from here. Like if I would do, how did I call it? What did I say? It's don't mock me, right? Right. And if I would parameters, it would be hello and then world, and then click send. I will get a missing authorization token. So now this error, this error, as I said, it does not actually mean that the token is missing, not all the time. It can also mean that don't mock me doesn't exist. If I have a look at here, the don't mock me exists, but there's a problem. It exists here, but we did not deploy it. So let me deploy this to dev. Why not? Mocking. If I deploy this to dev, and then go here, and then change this here to dev, and I do that, and they said this doesn't work, right? So it basically, hello world doesn't work, but if I do hello stream, click send, it works, right? And again, this works only in dev. If I would switch this to prod, this wouldn't work, right? So if I do that, it missing author that just doesn't exist. There's also one more thing I want to show you here as well, is that there is an option. If I want to deploy this to prod, there's one of the things you can do here. When I go to stages, wait, where is that? Do I not see it here? Oh yes, it's Zoom. There's Canary deployments. Now there's an option to do Canary deployments, and this is one of the ways you can do Canary deployments on AWS. So what are Canary deployments? The Canary deployments is where you deploy your new code or new piece of functionality to a certain percentage of your requests, right? So and it's actually named because of the canary bird, right? So back in the old days when miners used to mine mines, they would carry a canary bird along with them, which would sing constantly, right? So if there was a methane leak, a poisonous gas leak, the bird would die and it would stop singing. That means it's time for those miners to get out. So when you have a proper canary setup for code deployment, you deploy only a small percentage, and this is where you see if errors happen. If errors keep happening, you just quickly roll back, and you make the fixes to your changes. So let's create a canary. I want to say that 20% of my requests go to my canary. And that's it. Now the differences in canary is you basically deploy a different version of your API, but also you can add different stage variables, right? So variables are basically can be used by your endpoints and whatnot. So let's actually deploy our resources. This one, I'm gonna deploy it to prod. Deploy API, I wanna select prod. It's gonna go to Canary, right? So sing birdie, click deploy. Now, if I would go to prod here and click this, it will sometimes give me a missing authentication token. Sometimes, there you go. Let me try to find one. There you go. So sometimes I actually get a response because I've hit that canary endpoint, and I'm able to get this as well. So this is not the only way to do canary. You can do canary as well within your application, where you limit a subset of users to canary deployments, but that's a whole discussion for another time. Okay, so one of the last things I want to show you here is I want to show you how we can actually do API keys. So one of the things that API endpoints kind of bring to the table are the ability to authenticate people or authenticate API calls through the means of API keys. So let's first of all, let's create an API key. So API key is like that. So I have an API key already here created for Darko, but I'm going to create a new one. So create API keys, call it stream, and this is a key for the stream. Click save. Awesome. So API key, feel free to steal it. That's fine. I'm just going to put it here in my notepad. such. Now, I need to set up this API key. So, go to my API. There we go. So I need to do something with usage plans. So I will create a usage plan for, let's say, stream. You see, I've played around with it before, but streaming plan. There you go. I can enable throttling and quota. But I'm gonna just give a throttle of 5 per second with a burst of 100 per second. Let me just move my face. Click next. So throttling will actually throttle people from doing more than a certain number of requests per second. So click next. I'll add an API stage here from my Hello Stream API. I will give this to prod. Oh, it's not. Is it the Hello Stream? Yeah, it's a Hello Stream. Yeah. Why is this? Not all methods. Yeah, because none of my methods require API keys. So click this, click that, and that should be good. So going back to my APIs, again, I have to do this and this and this. One of the things I can do here for the hello world, I can add authentication requirements. So if I go here and I can say API key required is true, right? So save that like so. And this should now work, right? So I have basically set up all of this. Now it's time to test this out. So if I would basically, first of all, I need to deploy this, right? Deploy API. I'll just do it to prod. API keys, like so. I'll promote Canary. I wanna make sure that I will just move everything, all the recent changes to Canary. And now if I would go to Postman, right? If I would go here, and I would, well, don't mock me works, right? Don't mock me should basically still be getting this. But if I do hello, hello, and then let's just do some things here. Name, Darko, city, Berlin, right? If I click send, I will get a forbidden because I have a key here that's required, for this to work, right? So here's what I need to do. So one of the things I need to do is basically, it's very easy to set this up through Postman. You have to do it a bit differently if you use like curl, because you actually have to specify this key. You have to specify this key in the header, but within Postman it's relatively easy. So one second, I just want to find how do you do this. So I do this, copy this key here, and then I need to do this. An authorization, you can say API key, and that's the X API key. That's the key I need to use. Basically, this is the header I'm passing on. And if I would do send now, I get a forbidden again. Why am I getting a forbidden? Is that my key? Did I do it correctly? 1 second. I may have not configured something correctly. So going back to my resources, this thing requires API key like so. Yeah, it requires an API key. Then the usage plan is this one, and it's set to prod. Configure method throttling. Let me just do, okay, let me add a resource and method. Yes, okay, hello. And then method any, and I'm gonna just do something like 5, and a burst will be 15. Cool. A request for 5 is relatively low. So now if I would be doing this, why do I get unauthorized again? So if I'm not doing something correctly. So this should be fine. So I'm setting an API key, X API key like so. Add to header, yeah, that should be fine. Saving. So my header is Am I not saving something? Interesting. Let's troubleshoot. So let's see what's wrong here. I have my API key set here. Okay, sorry. I need to add an API key to my usage plan. So Darko, or no, there's the stream one, right? Yes, the stream one. See, that's my problem. There's usually a little yellow or orange little glowing thing once it finds a problem. So that's a great indication of this thing. So going back here, if I click send now, and there you go, it works. So I have authenticated, and you can see somewhere here the X Amazon API key is being passed within the header. So this is a super simple way you can integrate API keys with your API endpoints. Let's say you have an API application, and you want to have some specific location when you invoke something. Let's say you have you're invoking an email sender or some update into a database or something. You want to keep these keys used just for that, or you want to deploy. You want to give people specific permissions or specific, let's say, limits. You create a piece of software that limits certain users from not overwhelming your API. So this is a great way. If you want to do something more advanced, like having actual users and having their own profiles for your API gateway, there's also Cognito integration. Cognito is this user authentication / pool service we offer, and there's a whole integration method with Cognito and API gateway. And it can get very complex. Again, I did not do it today because it requires a lot more setup than just me clicking around the console here as well. So, going one step further from this, Cognito would be definitely the case. So I think that kind of wraps up from what I wanted to talk about today. So what did we mention today? So I spoke about what's an API gateway. Well, what's an API? What's REST? What does REST stand for? I've showed you there's a couple of versions of API gateway at AWS: HTTP API, REST API, and the WebSocket API. Most people use REST API, but with the new HTTP API, for it being cheaper and faster, but with a limited set of functionalities, you may be able to use the HTTP API as well. We also created an API. We created resources, attached methods to those resources, that those methods then invoke Lambda functions, right? So we're basically invoking a Lambda function, passing it some information through Lambda proxy integration, getting something back, right? We also created like a mock method or a mock resource that just interacts with the API gateway itself, and depending what it receives, it returns something back. I don't expect people to make massive logics here, but for some things this could be also useful. For example, a health check would maybe be cool as well here, that you can kind of get some information back as well. What did we do? Yeah, we talked about stages. We showed like how can you deploy your applications through stages. We also show you the Canary style deployments, where you only deploy your API changes to a certain subset of users. And finally, we had a look at the API keys, or how you deploy API keys, how you use API keys on Lambda, on API Gateway, and yeah, how would you assign authorization method or authentication requirements to or API key requirements to a Lambda or to a method within a resource. Yeah, and also we had a look at this lovely tool called Postman. Even though I like myself to do a bit of curl, right? I love my curl commands, but sometimes it can get a bit more complex where you have to kind of run through your terminal to set all those things. Postman just makes it easy. Postman also has a whole lot of different things you can use, and I would say any serious, any professional API developers use tools such as this. There's also some other tools. I have it installed here. It's called Insomnia as well, but I had some troubles with Insomnia for some reason. It could be just me. So I found Postman to work much, much better. All right. Well, again, thank you very much for joining the stream. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you will all have a really nice weekend as it's coming along. This has been a bit of a shorter week for me, as Monday was a holiday. So yeah, weekend is starting. I'll see you next week. Next week we're going to focus a bit more on operations and monitoring side of the world. So we're going to kind of skip away from serverless for a bit. We're going to be talking about some things regarding to CloudWatch, maybe some observability things. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And yeah, enjoy your almost Friday and actual Friday as well. So yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.